In this video, we will cover the texturing of this 3D model to create this animation, which you can add to your portfolio. All the files that I use are available for free on my Patreon. The link is in the description. And with that, let's get started. Okay, let's get started with the texturing of this 3D model. Hopefully you followed along with part 1 and you modeled this entirely from scratch using these references. If not, this whole Blender file will be available to download for free from my Patreon. You can consider following that. You can download everything you need to get started with this texturing practice. So the first thing we're going to do, just like our first video series, is I'm going to set up this bottom right hand window to be a rendered view. I'm going to use cycles for that, but before I do that, I want to kind of set up a new collection. So I'm going to come over to here and then just do right click, new collection, and then I'm going to call this the LCA for lights, camera, action. Make sure I click it, and then I'm going to shift A, add in a light area, just bring that up. I'm just going to come into the top view and bring it over here like this. And then I'm going to use RR to trackball rotate it and just kind of point it into the middle. You can just rotate it if you want to do it either which way. And then in this bottom view over here, I'm going to create this to be a rendered view. I'm in cycles. So what I'm going to do is change the world strength to 0. And then now it's basically all the lights coming from this plane or this light here. I'm going to increase its size to 3 and then increase the power to 500. That gives you some nice soft light. And then also in this collection, I'm going to add in a floor plane for now. So I'm going to add in a mesh plane. And then I'm going to go in the right hand view. I'm going to also add a solidify modifier. So just go to modifiers, click S. And then I'm basically just going to bring this down a little bit. I just want to be able to see it in the side view. So GZ, bring it down just below it. I'm going to go into top view, scale it up, plenty big, just until it hits where my light is. Perfect. Okay, and then in this view, I'm going to turn off the overlays like this. This kind of gives me just a nice top view to see what we're doing. Okay, so now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the materials for our keycaps. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to do it similar to the first video that we did on texturing, but we're going to select each of these. We're going to tab into edit mode, click A to select all the vertices, and then click U and then project from view. Basically what that's doing is projecting our UVs from this camera angle. So now if I'm going to bring this down up here, if we go up here and go to the UV editor, we can see that all these things have been projected from the top. So what I'm going to do is over here, click A to select everything and just scale it up like this. And then GX to just kind of center it, and then GY to center it vertically. Just make sure it comes right to the edge of the square because we're going to create a texture that we want to have with the maximum resolution. So just bring it out to the edges of the square. Okay, now here's the trick that we're going to use that I didn't actually know about in the first video. If you go to UV and then export UV layout, you're just going to basically save what you're seeing right here in kind of a black and white view. I'll show you what mine looked like when I created it. So this right here is basically what it is. I did it twice to test it, but what we're going to do basically is we're going to use this layout and then we're going to create a texture to create the icons for these keys. So once you do that, save this file somewhere. We're going to create this key texture. And the way I did that was I used Canva, which is a free editing online software you can use to do some picture editing. I paid for the pro version because there's lots of features that I use in some of my stuff. But what I basically did was I just grabbed that texture that we just did, pull it into here, and then bring it all the way to the top and bottom. And then now what you can do is you can just go to the elements tab and then you can just search like, a play button, scale it down, put it in the middle, do whatever layout you want to do, and then basically just go back and then delete this. And now you've got a black and white mask, and I think I've got it saved here. Yeah, so I added a Discord logo, a Blender logo. You can just put whatever you want to, but every texture that I make for this, the custom ones, will be available to download for free, so you can just go grab those. So then once you create your mask like this for your keys, just download it as a black and white PNG. And so once you have that, you're basically going to have this key texture logo or this mask. So now we're going to create our first texture. We're going to click this keycap here. We're going to go into the shader editor, click in, and then if you scroll with your mouse wheel in this top bar, it kind of brings you to where you need to go. So I'm going to click the new, call this keycap. And then basically what we need is two textures. We need one to be the logo and then the other to be the plastic. So what we're going to do over here is just Shift D, duplicate this. Now I'm also going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see. And then we're going to Shift A, and then type Mix Shader, This is going to combine those two. So I'm going to plug that in here and then plug this one in here. And then basically we need some way to control each of these shaders. So I'm going to drag out from this factor like this and do image texture. And then now what we need to do is go to where you just save that key texture. Like I said, you can create your own or you can download the one I made. I'm going to grab that key texture piece here. And then basically nothing really changes. And then what you really want to do is go down here to this one and you can now change this color. And what that's going to do is now you're controlling the plastic in this shader and then the logo in this one. So I'm going to bring this all the way down, basically like that. And now we can just grab each of our keys like this. Grab this one last, Control L, link materials. And now instead of having to line them up manually, you just get them automatically put in here like this. So that looks really good. Now we need to dress up these materials. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of bump to this, to the white logo, so it's not, just flat. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to bring this down, zoom in. If you drag out from your mask, it's a black and white image. You can basically convert it into a bump height texture. So I'm going to do that and then plug the normal into the normal. And then you can kind of see what it does here. Basically insets this little keycap. I'm going to click invert. So now that's actually poking out. You can see that little bit of shadow right here. Now it's kind of grainy. When you leave the strength all the way up, it doesn't usually do very well. So I usually go 0.3 and then reduce the distance value to 0.3 also. And then, I accidentally hit a little, if you hit the 1, 2, or 3 button at the top, it'll sometimes do this. And what it does is basically hides everything. So just come back over here and turn all your things back on and it'll come back. So if you've ever done that like me, you won't have to worry about it was. Okay, so now we got a little bit of a bump on our pieces here, but we need to change this to not just be a default gray. So what we're gonna do, just like the first texturing video, is do Control T, make sure your node wrangler is enabled, so go edit preferences and then make sure you have the node wrangler enabled. We're gonna delete this image texture, Shift A, and then do a noise texture instead. And then unplug the UV and plug in the object, because basically we did a top view UVs and it wouldn't be scaled right and it would be mix match and all kind of problems. So we're going to change it to object, put that into here, and then I'm going to drag each of these out over here and then pull out from your factor, bump height here, plug that into the normal. These are going to go absolutely crazy, but what we can do is then take this to like 500 on your scale. Still looks super weird. That's because the strength is super high. So let's set the bump to like 0.3. Let's go even like 0.1. And then I would bring the distance down to 0.1 also. And then now what we want to do is we can basically change the color of the keys, the way it looks. So what I would do probably is drop this roughness down, be more like a shiny plastic. And that already looks good right there. I think the scale might be a little bit too big on these bumps, but also, don't feel like you have to leave these the same. So if you have a shot that's super zoomed out and you want to increase the scale to where you can kind of see that texture, and then let's say you do a close-up shot and now you're like, okay, this is too big. You could come back and you could dial this up to like 750 and now it's got a little bit less. So feel free to do with, whatever scale you want to do there, just whatever you think looks good. And then also that roughness might be a little bit too low. I'm going to bring it back up. Something like that. Okay, perfect. So now we've created this keycap texture. Let's go ahead and do, just from top to bottom, let's do our switches. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of every collection except the bottom switch, like this. So now we just have this ground plane in our bottom switches. I'm going to go up here and make this an image editor real quick. So what we're doing now is basically doing these switches right here. And these are the bottom ones that we have in this bottom switch. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to click it and then create a new material. We're just going to use the material tab over here for these. I'm going to call it black plastic. And then it's going to be very simple. Drop that down to black, decrease the roughness a little bit. And then all we're going to do now is I'm going to turn my overlays back on to where you can see what I'm grabbing. Grab each of these switches. Click this one last, Control L, link materials. So now they all have this texture. Then I'm going to go out of the bottom one, so turn that collection off, and let's do our clear switches. So I'm going to grab this first one, new material, clear switch. Perfect. And then what we'll do is take the transmission and this little drop down here, turn this all the way up. And then I'm going to turn the roughness down to around 0.3. That's going to kind of give you that. I'm going to also hit period on my numpad key to center it where I can pivot around it. So basically, you don't have to do this. It's not very visible, but if you do some detailed shots and you want to like show the keycaps coming off, it's a nice look to do that. So I'm going to grab each of these switches like this. Click this one last, Control L, link materials. So now those are all transmissive. Now we're going to do our last switch thing, which is the white insert. You honestly wouldn't even have to change this. It's already white by default, but just to be concise, we're going to make a white plastic and then leave this basically the same. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit to make it not super solid white. Grab each of our insert pieces, Control L, link materials. Okay, so now if we turn each of these back on, you've got this nice little setup with a little detail inside. Now that you've seen what this looks like, if you want to go here and like change the roughness on this, you want to make it super transparent or you want it to be a little bit less so, I'm going to leave mine at 0.4. I think that looks good. And then I'm going to turn our keycap back on. So now we've got those pieces done. So I think next we're going to do the back plate, which I think is in the housing collection. So I'm going to click this back plate. We're going to do exactly the same as we did before. Tab into edit mode, A, U, project from view. I'm going to go into the UV editor. I'm going to hit U once I click that to get into it. And now I'm only concerned with this top face. So I'm going to click 3 and select it. And then basically what I want to do is come over here and scale this up to where it fits right within this one, just like we did on our switches. Like so. Okay, once we have that, I basically made another texture exactly like the other one, the first one that we did for the keycaps. So if I go to my textures and then open this backplate texture, I just imported the reference image into Canva, kind of traced it out. I didn't want to steal their name, so I did this beautiful little rest quieter instead of work louder. Funny guy. And so I basically made this texture, and then now what we can do is if we have this backplate texture, you can use the same method that I showed you on Canva to make that, but you can also download this one for free off Patreon. Also, the link is in the description. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the shader editor, and we're going to do the exact same thing as we did before. So create a new material. We're going to name it the backplate. Bring this down to where we can see. Duplicate our Principled BSDF. Add in a mix shader, like so. Plug this one in the bottom, this one in the top. For the factor, we're actually going to use an image texture again and open that backplate texture. And then just like before, if we bring this one down to black, you can see we've got our white text on here and then also that one. And then you can also go back to your UV editor. And then if you tab into edit mode and grab this face, if you move it around, you can kind of center it. If you want to make your face a little bit bigger, bring them in. Basically, you don't want to go too far though, because you'll basically start tiling into the other side. So I would just bring it right up until you start to see the next little piece, like on that left-hand side right there. Just bring it back to something like that. That looks perfect. So now we're going to go back into our shader editor. We're going to basically do the same thing as we did before. I'm going to pull this out a little bit, drag out from the color into a bump height, put that normal into the normal. That's going to give us this detail. I'm going to invert it so that it pokes out. Set both of these to 0.3, just like that. And then all I'm going to do for this bottom one is, this is kind of a metallic painted thing, so I'm going to crank this metallic up a little bit. I'm going to drop that roughness down, or bring that metallic basically all the way up. I'm going to do 0.9 for this. And then you could go through and you could go change your material. So let's actually do just a little bit of texture on this one. So Control T. We're going to do that, Shift A, add in a noise texture, plug that into there, get rid of the UV, plug in the object. Then we're going to drag each of these out into a bump height node, and then that normal into the normal. It's crazy too strong. Let's go 0.05, and then crank that scale way up. Basically, I might even drop the scale on this, kind of just have some general. So let's just do like 3, see what that looks like. And then I'm going to just change this way down. So I'm going to take this like 0.1. And then, yeah, that just gives it a little bit of something going on. Let's see if you can bring this up and just start changing it a little bit. That right there gives you a little bit of texture. You can kind of see when you're in the top view. I would just bring this strength down so it's barely noticeable. Like that. That just kind of helps you get something to where it doesn't, you can tell that it's not just a plain black surface. Another thing that you can also do real quickly is if you add in another texture, you can grab any of the generated textures from Blender. I'm going to grab this mapping and pull it in. And then you can basically take this and plug in that distance into the normal. or actually let's do this. Let's grab the distance and go into a bump height, and then come over here, plug that normal into this. So basically you can kind of layer these. I'm going to set this to like 0.01 for now. So this line right here is basically from this Voronoi texture. So if I scale this up, you can see, this beginning of this texture. So if I change this to 0.1 and then change this to like, it gets basically multiplied. But if I do like 0.01, you can barely see it there, but let's do 0.05. You can just begin to see that. So that's a little trick that you can use to kind of layer in these different layers of texture. So I'm gonna leave this like 0.02. And so now you got this nice texture on the back. You can tell it's got some detail on it. It's just not solid black. Feel free to go through here and reduce your roughness if you want it to be a little bit shinier, but I'm gonna leave this right around 0.3. Okay, so now we've got our key switches done. We've got these transparent pieces. The little back plate is done. You've got the bump detail going. So now what I want to do is we're going to kind of focus on this little area right here. So I'm going to kind of zoom in on this, and then I'm going to bring in a image editor and then bring that reference image back up just to show you what we're looking at. So I'm going to zoom this down a little bit. We're going to basically make these colors right here. Also, we need to put our screws back in. Let's go ahead and, we're already zoomed in. Let's do this one first. So I'm going to turn our screws back on just so we don't forget them. So I'm going to click this right here. I'm just going to make this to be that black plastic that we've already made. And then I'm going to click this 13 and make it its own thing. So basically what that does is we already used the black plastic for the switches, but now we're going to make a separate one for this. I'm going to name this just to, we can just make this plastic 2, whatever you want to name it. And then instead of it being so shiny, I'm going to actually let's leave this the same, but let's make this fully black. And then you can kind of play with how you want it to look. I'm going to bring the roughness up a little bit like that. And then I'm going to also give this inner circle the same material. So Control L, link materials. And then we need to make a new material for this yellow ring. So I'm going to click this one, click new. I'm going to click this base color and the eyedropper. And then I'm just going to zoom in and basically pick this. And then I'm going to click it, turn the saturation up like that. That's too much right there. And then we're going to name this yellow plastic just so we don't lose it. And then I would give each of these, let's just click this one right here, and we made a white plastic. Let's just give it that to where it has not a default thing. Also, I noticed that you can see these individual faces on these two. So if you right click and shade auto smooth, that's going to smooth out those normals and it'll help it not be noticeable on an up close shot. So now I'm going to click, this one has the white plastic. I'm going to click there, and here, Control L, link materials. So now those all have the materials applied. And then let's just go ahead and do our screws. If you look at the picture, they're pretty shiny black metallic. So it's going to be super simple. Let's just make this the screws. And then we're going to change the base color to basically black. Crank up that metallic, drop the roughness down. And then you can basically play with how dark you want these to be in your base color. And these are going to be different depending on what your scene looks like because they're so shiny. So if you ever rendered jewelry, you'll know that it's super easy to, reflect whatever is in the area. That's going to be what your thing looks like essentially. So we're going to click this last once you click all of your screws and then Control L, link materials. And that is set there. So now let's take a look at what we've got. We've done all the keycaps. We've done our switches. We have done our knob switch here. I basically left this the same. And then you might just grab this cylinder right here if you want. Let's just give it the, well, I don't get yellow plastic. No, let's give it a black plastic. Just so you have that there. Okay, so now you basically have all the texturing done on your actual model. We're gonna do another little cord that kind of comes out of here in the back, but we'll do that probably in the next video. But this is basically all the texturing setup for the actual model. So real quickly, I'm going to show you kind of how I set up the scene in the render. So I've already got this plane right here. I'm going to use this kind of as the mat, but I'm going to add one more plane. So Shift A, mesh plane. I'm going to scale it up pretty big. And then I'm going to GZ, bring it down. And then I'm also going to do the thing I did before. I'm going to go over here and to the modifiers and add a solidify. Just click S and it'll pop up, and then GZ to bring this basically right up against that. So what I did in the render was I have these really amazing assets from a company called Grayscale Gorilla, which I have set up in my asset browser. I'm going to pull this back to something like this. And then in the scene, I might set up like a plane over here to reflect it. But I'm basically going to show you how I set up this scene right here for the texturing of the back. So what I did was in my asset browser, I already have this library set up with all my good materials. I threw this rotary matte black material on here, this wood walnut on here, and you can already tell this is basically the beginning of that render. You know, I added in some more lighting and fixed some stuff, which we'll go through in the next video. But I know that not everybody's gonna, want to pay or have to do that. So what we're gonna do real quickly is go over how you could set up this wood and this matte if you didn't want to pay for anything. So I actually went online and I found a matte similar to this from BlenderKit. BlenderKit is a free plugin and company that makes models and textures and things for Blender. They actually have a really cool add-on. You can basically just import it. I used it for a long time until I started using some different libraries and stuff. So you could literally go download this matte for free. And then I'm going to show you a little trick about how you can change the color of things. So you can basically desaturate this to be black and white and it would look just like mine in the video. So if you want to, go download that and you can just import it into the Blender file, and then you can use this for your matte. And then for this background, for the the desk for the wood, what I would do is there's tons of free places to get PBR textures online. Ambient CG is one of my favorite ones. So you can find this wood 026. And basically what's going to happen is you can pick what resolution you want your textures to be, and then you're just going to download them and extract them. So just save them in a folder like this. So once you do that, all you would need to do is, I'm going to go back to this right here, and I'm going to make this back to my shader editor. I'm going to go over here to the tab. I'm going to get rid of the material so it goes back to white. So let's just say we wanted to set up a custom texture. So I'll just name this one wood. If you have the node wrangler enabled, just Control-Shift-T on this, and then all you're going to do is navigate to the place where you saved those images. Just select them all, and then node wrangler is going to automatically set them up. So you can do just like that, and then that sets up your material. Now you can tell this one looks a little bit different. The first thing I would get rid of is if it has displacement, I would get rid of that. Just click this node and delete it. That's going to help it look more normal. And then also it looks like this is kind of like zoomed in. So what I would do is come up here to the scale in your shader, maybe make this like 4, something like that. That's going to make this look more normal. And then also I mentioned a trick to be able to desaturate something. So let's say you downloaded that model of that thing and it's kind of a green color matte instead of black. What you could do is if you go to the textures for that model, there's going to be a node that's hooked into your base color, so some type of image. So what you can do is Shift A and then search for a hue, or Shift S or Shift A, whichever it is. Search for a hue saturation value node and plug it in. And then basically if you set the saturation to 0, that's going to make your texture be black and white. And so then you could even like reduce the value and make it darker and lighter. You can change this to do whatever you want to. Oh, this is actually kind of a cool black and white render, but I would set this back to 1. But you can also change, so like let's say this wood looks a little bit too like yellow to you. You can come up here to your hue and like adjust it to like 0.52. So that's basically going to give it a little bit more yellow look, or you could adjust it down a little bit, so 0.48. That's going to be a little bit more red. So this is a really good trick to know to like kind of manipulate a texture. So if you get it in the way you get it, you don't really like the way it looks, you can always go back and fix it. Personally, I like this material the way it is. It looks very similar to the material that I used from Grayscale Gorilla. This is probably just a little bit lower quality texture, but for me, I would go back into my asset browser, grab this walnut, throw it in. You can tell this one's a little bit lighter. That wood I showed you was a little bit darker. So just, if you go to Ambient CG, and just search in their wood collection. So I'm going to go back into Ambient CG, wait for this to load. They've got tons of assets. They even have an importer I talked about in a different video. But if you go to the gallery, and then I'm just going to do a 3D tab here, and then just search for wood. There's all types of wood. Oh, not this one. Let's go to the material PBR section. So now if you search for wood, you can pick from any type of wood in here. There's tons of options. It's all free. This is an amazing company. You can donate to them if you want to support them. They do really amazing stuff. So this one looks really good to me. It kind of looks like a scratched wood top desk, or any of these that you like. You can basically download the file, import it, and then And then another video, maybe I'll make a quick tip and show you how to save all these in your asset browser. So like also this one looks really good to me. So you can basically just pick whatever wood you want to look to make your scene look the way that you want it to look. So that is the majority of the texturing for this model. Like we created all of our keycaps from scratch. We did our back plate. We've got some nice imperfections on the metal pieces here. We've done our screws. We set up our basic scene. We'll go through setting up the rest of like the assets that I used and the lighting and all that stuff in our next video. So until part 3, when we do all that, if you're interested in learning some more, I have this other video that I'll put on the screen. We basically do this whole process from start to finish on this Teenage Engineering Synth 3D model. We do all the modeling, the texturing, and then also the animation and the rendering. So if you're interested, go watch that video. Feel free to subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram, and then my Patreon is there. It's listed in the description. It's free to join. You can download all the files, but it would really help me out if you want to support me there. I can keep making these videos. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. We'll be back in the next one to go through the scene setup, the animation, the lighting, and all that good stuff. So we will see you in the next video.